Hello, everyone, and welcome to WNTT Entity Theatre's podcast, All Things Theater. Each month, we will explore with our featured guests some fascinating aspects of theater: writing, directing, acting, stage management. Well, all things related to theater. This is Roger Voigt, and I have the privilege of hosting this podcast series. We will premiere a new show for you to enjoy with your morning coffee on the first Sunday of each month. If you miss a Sunday, no problem. You can listen to any of the podcasts from the past year by going to EntityTheatre.com and clicking on Podcasts in the primary menu. You can also leave comments there, including your ideas about making the podcast better and what you'd like to hear about on a future podcast. So, without further ado, let's get started with our featured guest this month.
Our guest this evening is Tracy Tollmann, the chair of the Bonn Players Committee. She brings to her role a passionate belief in the value of fostering increased synergy between members of an amateur theater group, as well as among theater groups Europe-wide. Working for a key United Nations agency for 23 years, she understands clearly the challenges of working with volunteers with many divergent interests and shaping that into a shared vision. Tonight, Tracy will talk to us about some of the issues and challenges of creating team in an amateur theater group. So, welcome to the podcast, Tracy.
Thank you for having me.
Maybe the place to start was some of the things that you mentioned early on in your when you were younger, where it was very clear you've been fascinated by theater from a very young age. Yet you still somehow find time to study other fields and get involved in so many activities that all seem to work toward creating a better life for everyone. How have you managed to defy the saying that there's only so many hours in the day?
That is an extremely good question. I often get criticized that I'm doing too much. My kids are always telling me, "Mum, slow down, you need to take a rest." I seem to be one of these, I would consider myself lucky people, in that I do have a lot of energy, and I do really enjoy being active. I get very frustrated if I have nothing to do. I become far too introspective. So I've always been somebody that has done an awful lot, and I have likened myself to a dynamo. So it's almost like you're pedaling away, but you're also recharging yourself, or maybe a hybrid engine, I don't know. But the more I do, the more I want to do. And I think it's all down to just being efficient in a way. You become more efficient the busier you are. So I have never found that there are too few hours in the day, although I'm pretty sure that my home would disagree with you, my garden would disagree with you, and maybe even my children would disagree with you on that.
One of the things that particularly caught my attention in your bio was your long involvement in rowing. I don't know anything about the sport except watching it. It's very clear that teamwork plays such an extraordinary role. Maybe you could talk a little bit about, 5 years on the rowing team. What have you learned from that that's been useful?
One of the things that attracted me to the rowing club initially, and that sort of happened by chance when I moved down to London, and I moved to a little place called Chiswick, which is on the river. And we were watching people rowing up and down. And I never for a minute imagined that I would ever be part of that community. But we were walking by the rowing club, and we just got chatting with people. And I actually got involved initially more on the social side of it. I was nabbed for some unknown reason to be the social secretary, and I was organizing balls and parties and all sorts of social events. I was adamant that I wouldn't row because I was nursing at the time. And when you're nursing, you work very odd hours, and it's very difficult to commit to a training regime, which is very important.
So you mean you were working in the nursing profession, not that you were nursing a young baby?
No. I was a registered nurse. I was one of the last state registered nurses in the UK. But I sort of got pulled into it and finally acquiesced because I just enjoyed it so much, and I enjoy being a part of a functioning team. And I'm not very good, as I think I mentioned before, at doing things just on my own. I like people. I am very gregarious in that sense. And so I actually quit nursing because of rowing. And I started working in a job that would allow me to do 9 till 5. So I could be on the river at 6 o'clock in the morning. I could then be back on the river at 7 o'clock in the evening. I could train throughout the winter and attend regattas every weekend during the summer without it impacting on my career. But what I just really loved, especially when we were actually rowing, apart from the fact that it is incredibly physically challenging, is that it's that working together to achieve a common goal. And I don't know if you've ever been in a sport where your contribution counts to the overall achievement, to the extent that if you don't all work together, your hands aren't all at the same height, you don't sort of push forward at the same time, take the stroke at the same time. It all has to be completely in sync and coordinated. And if you don't do that, your boat doesn't sit, it doesn't glide through the water. You're crashing around, and it's very uncomfortable. And but it's magic when it does happen, and it's that synergy that I enjoy in all of my sort of team experiences, be it at work, working with my unit, or in the theatre. With a cast on stage, everybody knows their lines, you're getting your cues on time, the props are where they need to be, the lights go on when they're supposed to go on. So rowing, I think, that was probably where it really became clear to me how important it is to have this teamwork. And it's not this synergy, it's not just a buzzword, it is super important.
Taking that realization of the importance of team, and still how do you translate that into a new environment can sometimes really be challenging. For a very relevant example here, you took over the role of chairwoman of the Bonn Players last year in the middle of the challenges of the pandemic as well. Quite brave, I would say. So after so many years as both actor and director, what prompted you to take on the demands and burdens of leading your theater company, bringing what you learned in rowing about teamwork into this completely different environment and making it work?
I was completely suckered into that one. and to be absolutely honest, it was your fault.
My fault?
Well, you'd invited me to participate in the directors panel at Feats.
Right.
At the Feats Fringe a couple of years ago. And you were insistent that I do it, even though I said, well, I haven't really directed that much. So I did it. And the existing chair at the time and one of the committee members was in the audience. And I don't think they'd ever really taken me seriously until that point. I'd acted, I hadn't directed for the Bonn Players. I was directing for the Bonn University Shakespeare Company at the time. Because the Bonn Players are quite daunting. They're very professional, they take themselves very seriously. And so as I say, I'd acted, I'd had lead roles, but I don't think anybody had ever really seen me in that light. And of course, this all changed when I was on that stage. And I don't see that I did anything sort of out of the ordinary, but I think they liked what they saw and what they heard. And at that stage, I was asked if I would be interested in becoming the vice chair, which I sort of also was a bit reluctant to do, because it was like, yes, I'll come on the committee, but can I please start as just an ordinary committee member and work my way up? And, you know, because I'm somebody that has very definite sort of ethics and values, that I believe that that people, in order to be respected, need to prove themselves first. You can't just have somebody swanning into a role and everybody being convinced that you're the right person for that role. But anyway, I did it, and what I didn't know was that that the chair back then had decided that she would actually retire in a year.
Oh.
She was grooming me to be the chair. And when I found out about that, I was like, I was shocked. I was sort of like, oh my God, no, that's far too much responsibility. COVID had already started at that point, so I did know what I was letting myself in for. Having said that, having been the vice chair and sort of seen what was going on, I just felt that we were limiting ourselves as a theatre company. And I know we're amateurs, and that, you know, people are doing this as a hobby, and it's because they love what they're doing and they don't necessarily have the time to do an awful lot more. But I just felt we had so many members that weren't being given an opportunity to be active, play on words there, active, to be able to participate and be more of a community feeling within the Bonn Players. So I was tempted, because I could see that, again, if you have to be in the room if you're going to be able to make change happen. And we are demographically a much older group of people generally anyway, especially if I compare us to the Bonn University Shakespeare Company, who are made up of primarily students and slightly aging students who still enjoy being with the BUSC. But I was very much, as I say, tempted to bring a lot of the ethos and enthusiasm and energy that I'd experienced in the BUSC into the Bonn Players, and also to expand our horizons a little bit. We started our 40th anniversary year at the beginning of this year, which again has been a very unfortunate year to start that sort of thing, because we haven't been able to do very much. But I wanted us to be as successful in the next 40 years as we had been in the past 40 years. So I think that was the game changer for me, and the thing that tipped the scales.
Well, good. That was good fortune for everybody, I think. So let's talk a little bit about the role of the leader in a theater group organization. What should it include? And perhaps equally important, what should the leader leave to others?
Yeah, I mean, that's probably the $1 million question, isn't it? And I think leadership is very difficult. And I mean, I've had a lot of experience at being led and by lots of different leaders with lots of different management styles. So I have had a chance to sort of pick out for myself what works and what I believe should be the ideal. It doesn't mean to say I always get it right. And I've learned an awful lot over the past 12 months. But I also think it's the willingness to believe that you can do better, and that you're not perfect, and you can learn, and being able to work on yourself and be kind to yourself, and understand that there are areas where you can improve. But for me, I think the main thing is collaboration, participation, and not having more of an old-fashioned way of doing it, which is not a criticism of people who've gone before me, but it has it has up until, I believe, my reign started. It has been very much command and control, very much top down. This is what we're going to do. And this is what you're going to do to make sure that we actually achieve it. And I prefer this team approach, that the benefit of multiple perspectives in any endeavor really help you to have a much better picture of what's actually going on. I love a metaphor. It's actually a picture of an elephant. And I think it's something like 9 or 10 blind people around the elephant holding various parts of that elephant. And if you ask them what they're actually holding, the guy who's holding the trunk will say it's a snake. The guy who's holding the trunk will probably say it's a tree trunk. Sorry, the foot, it's probably a tree trunk. And so on and so forth. You don't get the full picture just by having one viewpoint. So even though a lot of our viewpoints diverge, and we can sort of not quite come to blows, but have quite heated discussion, I think it's really healthy to do that, and then to try and remain open, and not go into anything with a fixed thing in mind, because I am new to this. I am relatively new to the Bonn Players. I've been there for 8 years, which in the grand scheme of things, when we've just had our 40th anniversary and a lot of the members have been there for the majority of those 40 years, they obviously have the institutional memory. And I would be an idiot if I didn't listen to those people, because there's very little in this world that is brand new. And a lot of them have already experienced it and have valid and really, really valuable experience to communicate. So when we go into each and every meeting, I mean, I set an agenda, but I send it out to committee members for their input. If there's anything they want to change or they have any issues with anything. We've also changed the way I've brought an awful lot of change into this committee. The committee meetings when we first started were 4 or 5 hours, which was just ridiculous, especially for those of us who are holding down more than full-time jobs. To be online for an additional 4 to 5 hours, one evening a month, was just ridiculous. So I looked at ways of trying to become more efficient. And one of the things I felt could be taken out of the meeting was the sort of regular reporting. So all of the regular reporting on issues that do not need decisions are done before the meeting. Just before the meeting, each committee member sends in their report, which we hope everybody reads, and we then take note of it at the committee meeting. That has cut our committee meetings in half.
That's a great qualification for your expertise right there. If it's okay, I want to go back just for a moment and talk about something you alluded to earlier with arguments and people getting into conflict with one another. I think that's probably almost inevitable when people, really care passionately about something. There's always going to be differences of opinion. There's always going to be conflict. How do you think you, as an effective leader, can help your members work through that and keep the conflict focused on producing a better result rather than becoming more personally focused and destructive of team spirit?
Yeah, that's probably one of the hardest things that I've had to do as a chair, because we have had a couple of people who tend to be slightly more on the negative/defensive side and have been very averse to change, as well as being averse to even adopting online practices, because I do get it, right? My kids are the ones that teach me how to use my mobile phone, all sorts of different new technology, and it's not always easy to come up to speed with that. I do think it's important to listen communication, as I've always been told, the reason we have two ears is because we need to do more listening than talking, because we've only got one mouth. But also to try and understand where people are coming from. I mean, my background is negotiations, international negotiations on climate change. And one of the things that we definitely try and practice is to understand why people have the stance and the position that they actually do. And again, I love metaphors. I use metaphors for a lot of things. But if you have two sisters and there's one orange and they both want the orange, the ideal thing would be, if you didn't listen to them, would be just to cut the orange in half and give them half each, right? But if you listen to them and you find out, well, one wants the rind for a cake and one wants the juice to be able to, because she's thirsty and she wants some orange juice, they can both get 100% of what they actually wanted. So I do think taking the time to listen to people and understanding what motivates them, why they have the position they do, and then trying to find a solution based on that is paramount. We actually organized a retreat, which I can also highly recommend for the committee members, where we had not an external moderator, but we had somebody from the members who is very neutral. She's actually a psychiatrist. So that's probably exactly what we needed. But she came in and we'd already established the sorts of questions that we wanted to ask. We set the boundaries from the beginning, which is no negativity. Nobody tries to be destructive. It's all constructive. And we're trying to find ways to improve the way that we work together. And not that it was really bad, but we just felt we needed a sense check. We needed to take the temperature and really take the time to understand.
Recognizing that there was room for improvement, right?
Yes, and to respect each other's and to get to know each other more as people than committee members, which I think sometimes is what you need to grease the wheels. Ideally, we would have done this in a pub somewhere with a couple of bottles of wine, but it really helped. And like one of the issues that we have been having recently, I'm obviously an environmentalist, and I've been wanting to bring sustainability not only to the Bonn Players, but also in the form of a sustainability compact between all of the theatres within Bonn. We now have a green mayor, and I just felt that this was an ideal opportunity. The IPCC report just came out and we're at the 11th hour here. We've seen the weather impacts. So for me, it was a complete no-brainer. But I also had a number of people on the committee who said, but this isn't what we are here for. We're here to perform 2 plays a year. Why would we want to become political? Now, for me, it's not a political issue. So we obviously had an awful lot to work through there. But what I didn't want to do was just wade in with the science and, sort of all of the highfalutin jargon and browbeat them into this is what we should be doing. So we had a long discussion about this, and I think at the end, I don't think everybody's convinced because I don't work miracles, but I do think they felt that they've been heard.
And that's really important, isn't it?
Yeah.
I wanted to, acknowledge that theater productions are by their very nature competitive. Everyone wants as much media coverage as possible. They want the best actors. They want high-tech lighting and sound equipment and so on. Yet at the end, all of the productions have to contribute positively to the artistic presence in the community and the public image of the theater group. So as important as teamwork is, and you've made that very clear, there still is a need to balance teamwork and competitiveness in order to get the best results, right?
I think that's actually debatable because we all have the same objective. And I actually find sometimes that especially as our membership, as I mentioned before, the demographic is more towards aging, and a lot of our really good actors are now reluctant to take on major roles because of the line learning, and they're terrified that they're not going to be able to remember the lines, or physical impediments. We had an actor in a piece that we were rehearsing for Feats before it got cancelled twice, and she was having problems with her knees. She couldn't get up off the beds that she needed to, and so she actually pulled out of it. So sometimes I actually find it's harder for us to find sufficient people who want to act and direct and take part in backstage stuff. We've managed to turn that around a little bit this year, and we've actually been working on, let me see, we had Sharks in the Custard, No Exit, The Diaries of Adam and Eve, the Victory Gardens, and we've also launched a youth theatre group this year because we obviously didn't have enough to do. So we've got all of these productions at the minute waiting, quite literally waiting in the wings to be performed. We're hopeful that we can put on No Exit by Jean-Paul Sartre, which is very relevant to current situation, by the way, if anybody knows that play. We're hoping to put that on in September, and we've got an excerpt from the Diaries of Adam and Eve, and the Youth Theatre Group are putting on a wonderful short production that they've written themselves called We Have to Save the World. So that will be on at the Theaternacht in Bonn on the 5th of September. And I've never had the feeling that we really compete with each other, because if people want to do something, whether it's a feasibility play reading or in the play reading group, we're in the process of launching a creative writing group. We make it happen somehow. And we're very careful when we commit resources. I use lots of different tools like an Excel spreadsheet, and we have Google Docs, and we keep an eye to make sure that we're not double committing people, or we're not putting too much on any one individual. And we're getting a lot of new members at the moment because we've put articles out there in the Generalanzeiger English section. And for me, it's more of a problem of, oh my God, how am I going to keep all of these people engaged, and what can I offer them? We also launched this time last year a quiz night, a monthly quiz night, which is also for the people who can't act anymore, who don't want to act, but just want to be part of the community. It brings people together, and we have a lot of fun one night a month doing quizzes.
So that's I guess a wonderful problem to have, that we have more things we want to do than we have people that want to participate. There's also, at least what I've observed, is that there can be, a particular director is used to working with certain actors, and they tend to, if they're doing a new production, those are the ones that they want to work with, which kind of can lead to building cliques and a sense of new people coming in. Well, where is there a place for me? It sounds like you've found a way to deal with that pretty well.
Well, I mean, I agree with you. There is a tendency to do that, but we've also become very strict as a committee when any production is up for grabs, and whether that's a full-on production that will be performed in front of hopefully a live audience, or it's a feasibility play reading, we do a call to everybody. They have to be members, of course, and they are auditioned. And I've actually had instances where I've auditioned people, and I've been completely knocked off my feet by people who turn up that I hadn't expected. And when I'd thought of somebody, because I think we all do it, right? You want to direct something, you have people in mind for particular roles. But again, you should never be set in that, because you can be quite positively surprised by people who turn up and they do a fantastic job. So I think you do a disservice to your membership if you are too fixed in that. If people absolutely insist on doing it and they want to direct something, I'm not sure there's an awful lot you can do to dissuade them, unless you maybe make it that it's a panel who decide on roles that are assigned. But again, that's a little bit too command and control for my liking. I think at the end of the day, if you have a successful play and you're getting the audience in and you're satisfying that, you've achieved one of your objectives. My way of doing that then would be to create other opportunities for other actors, which is what we've actually done. As I say, in the past, we've only ever had 2 productions a year, our spring production and our autumn production. And I saw that was getting very much, it was always the same people on the stage, and it was limited numbers. We were doing plays for small, two people. I was actually asked to do a one-woman play recently, and I turned it down because I don't think that's what we should be doing. I'm in the process of preparing for next year, where we will do The Merry Wives of Windsor by Shakespeare, and that's got a huge cast, and it's a lovely ensemble piece, so everybody gets a good shot. And I think that's what we should be doing as community theatre. I don't think it should be, I mean, there is a place for it and you can do it, but not only. And I think our objective is to give our members their money's worth and make them want to stay. And they don't want to stay if they're not getting on stage, or they're not helping, or they're not active and they're not participating.
That's really self-evident, isn't it?
Yeah.
So, you mentioned you were bringing in new members. That's another area that I'm really interested in, because I know there are people that are sort of interested in theater, but they're terrified at the idea of going on stage or whatever. What kinds of things are you doing to create a really safe space so that, somebody who's new can be tempted to come in, well, I'll try that, it's low risk, and then discover the joy? Is it workshops? Is it readings? What kinds of things have you tried?
Okay, when people first contact us and they say we're interested, we definitely, I'm normally that first point of call, and I send them out an email which just identifies everything that we have on offer, gives them the website, and explains how they can join. Once they have joined, we identify a buddy for them, because I appreciate the fact that it's really hard when you first of all come into anywhere new, and if you're left to your own devices, people tend to stay in their comfort zones, right? And they probably don't necessarily get as involved as they would like to. So with this buddy system, they are informed of what's going on. People bring them along. They introduce them to other people. It's been especially difficult because of COVID, of course, but most of our activities have gone online. And one of the first things that I direct people to are the play reading groups, because they are normally quite small groups. They get a chance to just read the plays. It is a very safe environment. You don't have an audience per se, because you've just got people in the Zoom or Teams room. So, but it does give you an opportunity to read something and play a role. And that's the sort of first paddling pool, sort of entry level, as it were. Then we have, we do workshops. We've offered, I think, 6. If you count the youth theatre group, it's probably more like 10 workshops so far this year, all online. Apart from the youth theatre group, recently we've had them rehearsing in person. But we've done makeup, which is a brilliant workshop to do online because you can show people what it is they actually need to do. We've had acting in front of the camera, which has been really relevant because we've streamed a lot of plays over the past year. And I've been doing Merry Wives of Windsor workshops where I've just given people different roles, and they've gone away into breakout rooms and workshop them literally, and then come back and performed them, and they've been critiqued. I road tested my edited version of the play with a recent workshop where we just read right the way through it, and I assigned over 2 days, and we assigned people different roles so they could try different things, and that's also to sort of socialize the play and get people used to what it's all about, the characters, and hopefully then I will get interest when I audition next year. That's
so then you have these interactions, and I was really fascinated by your idea of the buddy system, because not only does that provide a welcome home, if you will, for a new member, but for the person playing the role of the buddy, that's saying, hey, you know, you're playing an important part of what we're doing here as well. So you're creating these social connections and so forth. Maybe it's the social connection that we're all looking for.
It really is, and especially during COVID. I think it's never been more important than now. And there are a lot of people out there who are very lonely. And Bonn, we are fortunate because we've got quite a high English speaking community. And I think we have helped people a lot to cope with COVID, because we have kept them engaged, we have kept them active, we've provided them with opportunities to meet people and not be alone. And I think that's if we've achieved anything this year, I think that's probably one of the most important things.
And a great accomplishment at that.
Yeah, the youth theatre group as well. I mean, kids have really suffered through this whole thing. And it's been great to give them a creative outlet. And we now have, I think it's getting on for 40 kids.
That's amazing. That really is amazing. Well, you know, welcoming new members, finding new members, obviously is important for the growth of the organization. But the flip side is that sometimes people move on. You know, it may be for business reasons, whatever. When that happens, how do you acknowledge the contribution that they've made? If they're leaving because of a conflict, how can you try and heal the damage to team relationship and learn from what happened, so maybe avoid it in the future?
Yeah, I mean, there are two different elements there that you just mentioned. One is definitely the easier one. If people move on because of job or work commitments or family or whatever else, whatever reason they're leaving, is obviously a lot easier to actually deal with. If people leave because they have disagreements and just feel that they can't be in the group anymore, we don't actually have that many of those. We had one a couple of years ago where somebody was spoken to in a way that they felt that they could not continue to be a member, which was a huge shame. We did reach out, we did talk to them, try and persuade them that things were changing, that wouldn't continue, but their decision, that was it. And at the end of the day, you have to respect that. And I think it's probably more important what you said at the end, which is what can you learn from that and how do you prevent that from happening? I also had a situation at the beginning of this year, and as I say, I've learned an awful lot. I've made so many mistakes, it's untrue. But I have had sleepless nights. I have cried. But yeah, I mean, it's all part and parcel of learning. And the more you do, the more mistakes you can make, right? And that's how we learn. And but I've always, well, in this particular instance, I went to the person in question and I said, I'm sorry, you're absolutely right. I screwed up. I shouldn't have done that. I have learned from it. Please accept my apologies. I will try everything in my power that this does not happen again. And it worked, amazingly enough. And yeah, you know, I think that's important, that that people can admit if something didn't go the right way, that they learn from it, and that it doesn't happen again. And communication is normally at the root of all of this. And it's a lack of communication, and it's assuming other people are communicating, or that what you've been told is the correct story. And I think you always have to, as a chair, you always have to do your due diligence, and you always have to check before you make any snap decisions or take actions that you might live to regret. One of the things I don't regret, though, and this is something that I have been called out for this year, is that I'm too eager, that I'm too enthusiastic, and I'm too can-do. I don't regret any of those, because for me, they are not insults. They are not negative things. They are not bad things for a chair to have. It's very much the fact, as I mentioned before, some people are change averse. And the one thing that I have learned from that is that I need to socialize ideas and warn people a little bit before I just launch into action.
Yes, I know that one very well. About soliciting scripts and directors for future productions, how do you evaluate the proposals? And perhaps equally important, how do you follow up with those who submitted scripts but they weren't accepted, so they understand why they weren't accepted, what they might do to improve their chances on the next round, and leave them encouraged to try again?
As I say, we've probably suffered a little bit more in the past from struggling to even find plays to do that would suit us, that would we wanted very much this year, because and it was actually very difficult to identify something that we all felt would fulfill all of those criteria, that we would be able to cast. It's so far it's been fairly straightforward from the point of view of people come up with something and the committee discusses it as a whole collectively. It's not something that one person makes a decision on. When we get scripts, we normally have our play reading group read them first, just to test them out. As I say, that's our sort of testing ground, not just for new members, but also for any new plays that might come in. And we listen to what they have to say, sort of some of the challenges that they see in producing something. We were very interested in doing Lend Me a Tenor, and I think that was after seeing that you guys had done it. But we just felt at this moment in time it's probably not the right thing to do, but it's still a play that I would love to do at some stage. Yeah, it's very much we take it on a case-by-case basis, and we see who we've got around at the time, but it's for example, Feats is coming up again next year. Hopefully it will actually take place. We're not sure we'll get a spot, because we've been in the last two which have been cancelled, but we've decided as a committee that we would like to express interest, and we're now in the process of trying to decide what would we do. So people come, we welcome ideas, we put things out we have a monthly newsletter which has all the information in it, so our members know exactly what's going on, and we put a call out. But our members have not been wonderful at coming forward and giving us lots of ideas. So we tend to have a look at what other people are doing within our sort of colleagues around Europe. The Hamburg players have some lovely ideas. You guys do some lovely plays, and we sort of feel, you know, imitation is probably the highest form of compliment you can pay anybody. So that's definitely one place that we go to actually do that. But yeah, we're always open, and we consider things and we discuss them. If something does get rejected because we just don't think that that it's the right play for us, or we probably wouldn't have actors to do that, we're always short of men. If there are any men here listening and they want to come up to Bonn, I will take care of you. Please.
So we've really delved into a lot of detail, and the thing that kind of stands out for me is that your enthusiasm and your sense of connection and trying to make that part of the core fabric of your group. You know, kind of taking a step back now at a higher level, is there any kind of summary things that you'd like to say in that regard about how to bring team to an acting organization?
Well, first of all, and again, to use an old adage, there is no I in team. If you've got an ego and, you know, it's my way or the highway, or you're a micromanager and you can't empower people and let them do what they need to do, then you really shouldn't be on a committee. I'm sorry. Unless, and I mean, I'm sure it works for some people. And as I say, the Bonn Players has been very successful for the past 40 years. And I'm not saying that, but we're talking about team here. And there's a difference between having a manager and people who do little jobs and they do as they're told. For me, a team on a committee of an amateur theatre company, it needs to be participatory. It needs to be collaborative, because you gain so much from all of those perspectives and different life experiences and viewpoints and worldviews. And you can only become stronger by that, and only through that, and letting go and allowing people that sort of element of power, as it were, do you really have a team, and you really benefit from that. I wouldn't be able to do half of what I do if it wasn't for my vice chair, who takes on an awful lot, and all of the committee members. They're all equally active and enthusiastic.
Well, if for the listeners, if you want to find out more about the Bonn Players and their many activities for both youth and adult actors, be sure and check out that new website at www.bonnplayers.de. Tracy, thank you so much for sharing your time, perspective, and insights with us today.
It's been my pleasure. It really has. You don't realize half of the things you're doing until you actually stop and talk about them with somebody else. So I've benefited from this exchange as well. Thank you very much. And I wish you and Entity all the best going forward.
Thank you.
This has been a production of WNTT Entity Theatre. Remember to tune in again on the first Sunday of next month for a new episode of All Things Theatre. Tell your friends about this great program and let them know they can listen to past podcasts at any time. Oh yes, if you really like this podcast, we would very much appreciate any donation you'd like to make. Just click on the PayPal button you see below or on our webpage at EntityTheatre.com. We thank you in advance. So, this is your host, Roger Voigt, saying goodbye for now, and until next time, when we will again talk about all things theater.